This is Kevin Collins with Home Theater Forum. We have Kevin Voecks from Harmon, who's in charge of the Rebel speaker line. Kevin, can you, I've known you for a long time, can you kind of give our viewers or our forum members a kind of a history of why you're so qualified and why I'm talking to you as the speaker expert?
Absolutely. I actually started in the business in retail and had a high-end retail store, which is still one of our good dealers in Massachusetts, where we had all of the best high-end brands, but it was very clear that the weak link was loudspeakers of all the equipment. They varied the most from one to one and another, sounded completely different. None of them sounded real. And so I started on that path then, actually specializing in engineering school, specifically in loudspeaker design. So I left retail, ready to make the world safe for sound quality with better loudspeakers, and started the first Mirage line in Canada. And then I had worked with Peter Snell for a long time at my retail store, and actually his loudspeakers were clearly outperformed any of our much more expensive loudspeakers, and he had a very different approach to the science of loudspeaker design than most of his contemporaries, with things that at the time I considered just outrageous too, like how could you use high order crossovers, or the problem with room interactions and how he dealt with that, and how the interaction with the boundary, for example, was a very sophisticated way that most of which is still being done. That's better. So from there, at Mirage, Peter Snell unfortunately died unexpectedly, and I didn't want to see that go away, so I took over engineering at Snell, and then had the wonderful opportunity to work with a company from the ground up. So Dr. Harmon and Dr. Floyd Toole, that was a very long-term friend, invited me to start a high-end company at Harmon that had the same kind of worldwide cachet as Mark Levinson did and does in electronics. So fortunately, there wasn't some company to acquire that really had the combination of real engineering and what we all recognize as true audiophile characteristics. They're kind of hard to sum up, but the sensitivity for how great sound really can make music more impactful and increase the emotional experience that we derive and the joy from great music reproduction. So there is the story of how Revel began, and it's great to start with the greatest resources in the world in terms of engineering, real research, which is very, very rare in our industry, but we have the greatest researchers in all sorts of basic acoustic issues, particularly focusing on loudspeakers and the way they interact with the room, which was pioneering work that Dr. Toole did, and we've continued upon that after he left the NRC and joined Harmon.
Well, I'm just a disclosure of our forum members. I've had Rebel speakers even before I met you, and then it was great to meet you. That it's like, geez, I get to meet the guy who's doing all the product development and the founder of Rebel. So, can you tell us what we have here new at CEDIA on, that you guys are announcing in terms of Rebel speakers?
Absolutely, and I should be quick to point out that one of our strengths is that it's not me, it's a real team. We've got a big team, and we've got specialists in every area, and that's one of the things that really makes us different from most high-end companies that don't have those outrageous resources. So given that there's so much interest in architectural loudspeakers, even from audiophiles, we hadn't really approached that. So we spent a couple of years working hard on how do we get the kind of sound quality that we expect in architectural loudspeakers. And we feel that we've really done that, as well as attack the aesthetic issues that are the reason that people use them to begin with. So in the new series of loudspeakers, there's 21 models, and each of them has gone through our double-blind listening tests, which is one of our most important things. We've got great measurement facilities and all that, but the last word is how they sound. So we have a three-cornered spinning wall, essentially, that will let you compare 3 loudspeakers from each other and without seeing them. But importantly, they're always in the exact same spot, so there's no location dependency issue. And they're changed very quickly, so given that our actual oral memory is so short, we're able to change them quickly enough that it's the most sensitive possible discerning kind of test. So out of that came these loudspeakers, where we've done a number of interesting things. We're very, very careful, of course, with the transducer design. You have to start there. Sophisticated filter networks, high quality parts, attention to freedom from resonances, and one thing that even do-it-yourself installers are going to really appreciate is that no tools are required to install the speakers. They just pop right into the wall with very strong springs, and they can be removed if you, forgot to connect the loudspeaker. We've been careful to minimize diffraction. The tweeters all have waveguides, and as you go up in price, we use better tweeters that actually are unheard of for architectural loudspeakers. The tweeters in the upper models are better than most floor-standing loudspeaker tweeters, and that makes a huge, huge difference in sounding real and convincing. We also have bezel-free grills that completely cover the loudspeakers, so there's none of the large bezels showing like you typically see. These are entry-level loudspeakers from JBL that supplement the line. All of the in-ceiling loudspeakers come with both round grills and square grills. So in some areas, in particular in the east, square lighting fixtures have completely taken over, and so they want to have a similar aesthetic in the home. One interesting thing about these is that in-ceiling loudspeakers have always been inferior to in-wall loudspeakers as a group. And the reason is, you look at this, and we've got nice freedom from diffraction, not anything that's going to introduce resonances. With an in-ceiling loudspeaker, people often use a big bridge across here that causes really bad reflection problems from the woofer, which you have to remember is operating up to at least 2 kilohertz. So it's in a terrible place, and there's bad diffraction from it. So we looked at how can we make in-ceiling speakers perform much more like in-wall loudspeakers, or are in-wall loudspeakers. And so we've created this pod, which is carefully designed to minimize resonances, and there isn't a resonance problem, due to the shape, and it doesn't shadow the woofer at high frequencies. So in fact, both in measurements, and we do the 70-point or 35-point, it's half space, measurements, just like we would do with a floor standing speaker, where because it's 4 pi rather than 2 pi is 70 measurements. You can see it both in the measurements and in listening tests that these are a big, big, big step above any other in-ceiling loudspeakers that we found at any price. And these cover a whole wide range and actually sound like music.
Is there anything preventing someone though from putting these in the ceilings? I mean, if they wanted to.
No.
So, if you had a freedom of design, would it still be better to go with this in the ceiling versus? Or are you saying this has actually no impact in terms of?
It has a little. So the in-wall loudspeakers are still somewhat better than the in-ceiling. We've closed that gap dramatically. There's still some preference for the in-walls if you have that freedom.